Welcome back, everybody. Well, you have been asking for this since it came out a few days ago, so we're going to take a look at the brand new epic rap battle of history. It's Richard the Lionheart versus Ragnar, the famous Viking that if you've seen History Channel's show, The Vikings, and you know that Ragnar, the first 4 seasons or so, are about him, and then later on about his children. So much of what we know about Ragnar is actually kind of steeped in legend and mythology, so he's one of those characters that it's hard to separate what really happened from what kind of Norse mythology says about him. So I have not watched this yet. I'm very curious to watch it and see what bits I can pick up from history. I'm sure I'll miss some things, so please use the comment section below to drop in your own things that I may not have observed or may not have mentioned that you catch along the way, and I'll try to kind of talk about some of the highlights as we go. Here we go.
Rise of Kingdoms.
Richard the Lion versus Ragnar Lothbrok! I'm Richard the First from the Third Crusade. That only leaves room for you in second place. The chivalrous swinger of the sword and mace, and I kill you when I spit like a pit full of snakes.
Okay, all right. So we'll stop right there. He right away he goes and mentions the pit full of snakes. Supposedly, the way that Ragnar Lothbrok dies is that he comes up against King Aella. I think he's the king of Northumbria. I'm trying to remember because Northumbria was kind of the part of England that kept getting invaded by the Vikings. But King Aella, I guess, put him in a pit of snakes, and that's how he dies. And then later on, you have what's called the Great Heathen War, where Ragnar's sons, including Ivar the Boneless, come back and just wreak havoc on England in revenge for the death of their father.
The number one dick, rising up to make you feel small. My battering ram slams through your shield wall. I'll announce at the next of your things that I'm chopping through your family like boneless wings.
So Boneless, that's a reference to Ivar the Boneless. I don't know if we 100% know for sure where Ivar got that name from, but he did have a hard time walking. And you see that portrayed in the History Channel show Vikings. You see Ivar as kind of this really ruthless and mean and kind of vicious fighter, but he has a hard time being able to walk on his own.
Of course you got avenged by a kid with no bones. Your own story ended worse than Game of Thrones. Your son killed your ex killed your wife. I'm the Lion King, man, but that's a messed up circle of life. Half-ass head taps can't be condoned. It's like you raided the face of Post Malone. I'm scared of no foe. I'm backed by the Trinity. I'll conquer you on my day off like you were Sicily.
So Richard the First, I should say, spends almost his entire, I think he was king for 10 years, like 1189 to 1199, spends almost his entire reign outside of the country on the crusade. He conquers Sicily. He's on his way back from crusade and he gets captured, and basically England has to pretty much sell themselves out as a kingdom to pay the ransom to get him back. And then he's putting down a rebellion in France, and he gets killed by, I think it was a crossbow shot by like the cook from the top of this castle. And you see that portrayed in the Russell Crowe version of Robin Hood. And so he spent like 6 months of his 10-year reign actually in England. He's mostly concerned with things overseas. He really wasn't that great of a king for England. He practically bankrupted and destroyed the country in the process.
Threatening to conquer Ragnar is bold. For a king who got whacked by a 10-year-old, I'll sacrifice you to Odin while drinking horns of mead. Good thing you hold the red cross, cause that's who you're going to need. You built your army by raising English taxes. I raised my army taxing English asses with my axes.
Yeah, so Ragnar was notorious for his raids, his Viking raids as they call them, on England, especially the north and eastern part of England. And for centuries there, a good portion of England at any given time is controlled by what they would have called the Danes. Scandinavians, we're talking about, Swedish, Danish, Norwegian. He ravaged that country. And of course, these guys don't live at the same time. They're a couple of centuries apart.
Who are you to talk about the circle of light? Your old lady can't feel the love on any night.
So Richard I never had any children with his wife. There's a lot of speculation about whether or not he was homosexual. And, it's really hard. I know people like to kind of make that observation about different people. You know, Edward II's another example that they say, oh, he was probably homosexual and had a relationship with Piers Gaveston. We don't know for sure. And honestly, I think that stuff gets overblown. I think anytime somebody doesn't father a bunch of children, we make that speculation. And I'm sure along the way throughout history, there were people who were homosexual in those positions of leadership because it wasn't something they would have come out and talked about. But honestly, it's not that big a deal. I don't think. He did have an illegitimate child. I think his name was like Philip of Cognac, that he had sometime before he became king.
Your only son was illegitimate.
There he is.
You aired on the side. Was just fine like the end of the Plantagenet.
You erred on the side. I like that. We don't even know who the mother was of Philip of Cognac. We do know that he, I think, was an acknowledged illegitimate son of Richard. They called him Richard, or they called him Philip FitzRichard, son of Richard. But yeah, Plantagenet line, and you know, the Plantagenet kings did not call themselves the Plantagenet dynasty. I think they were usually called the Angevin dynasty because they descended from the Dukes of or the Counts of Anjou, which is where the dynasty got started with Geoffrey Plantagenet. Plantagenet's a name that we threw on them much later.
I'm just a warrior. I'm not the linguist, but I think the King of England should probably speak English.
Yeah, so the kings of England didn't speak English as their first language. Their language of their court was French, and they were by and large French, not only in their language and in their genealogy, but also in their culture.
You took Acre and Jaffa like a piece of cake, but never attacked Jerusalem for Christ's sake.
So Acre and Jaffa are in the they're north of Jerusalem. They were common cities, territories that were fought over during the Crusades. But of course, the big prize was Jerusalem, which Richard never did take.
Saw the Holy Land, but couldn't go all the way. We should call it the Crusade of Richard the First Base.
So again, we're talking about the fact that Richard didn't have any legitimate children, so there's these constant references to him not going all the way, whether it's in Jerusalem and taking Jerusalem, or with his own wife.
Sail back north with your barbarian goon, because I'm tearing down your legacy, leaving it in ruins. Your real self next to your legend disappoints. I see you shaking in your shaggy little pants like zoinks. Who invented the royal me? We. Who's the predominantly fictional MC? You're
So yeah, again, what I said at the beginning, so much of what we do know about Ragnar is steeped in legend and mythology, and it's hard to separate what's true from what's just part of Norse mythology and kind of that stuff. Whereas much more of Richard's story is well documented and known. But again, I think Richard gets way overblown as a king. He's constantly ranked as one of the best kings when you interview, regular people. But when you really take a look at his history and what he did, he really didn't accomplish all that much.
a wannabe, mon ami, kneel down and honor me. Richard coming through in the end like Sean Connery. The devil coronation.
Okay, that was pretty good. Richard coming through at the end like Sean Connery. So if you've ever seen one of my all-time favorite movies, despite all of its flaws, is Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, starring, oh gosh, now I'm losing his name, starring Kevin Costner as Robin Hood. And yeah, so they constantly talk about Richard the Lionheart all throughout the movie, but you never see him. And then when Robin Hood and Maid Marian are about to get married, Sean Connery's Richard the Lionheart shows up. Of course, he's much older than Richard was historically. Shows up just in time to give away the bride. And so that's kind of a reference to that.
Blood and gore, me. You might have the axe, but I make a body spray. Laying horses over cave and I'll strike like a cobra. If I wanted to fight loser Vikings, I'd go to Minnesota.
No, if I wanted to fight loser Vikings, the Minnesota Vikings football team.
Want to fight me? Take off the thin shirt. I'll be waiting in my birthday suit, going berserk. Ding dang dong, morning bells warn about me at the break of dawn. And I'm putting you to sleep like your brother John. Living monks and chunks on Northumbrian lawns, as I'm the all-father smoke.
So, a lot there, but basically they talk a lot about raiding Northumbria and the bells ringing, which was a warning that the Vikings were coming, because you'd see them offshore in their ships as they were coming in, or in their boats as they were coming in. And it makes a reference to Richard's brother John, who succeeded him as king after he died. And John is notoriously thought of as one of the worst kings that England's ever had.
Oh, you couldn't even beat a salad in a fight. You yourself this Monty Python Nights. You went for
Monty Python Nights. So, every time in Monty Python and the Holy Grail, you have you have them riding. They're not actually riding horses. They're pretending to ride horses, and you've got a guy behind them using coconuts and banging them together. And it's one of the ongoing jokes throughout that movie.
Chainmailed and chained up in jail. The mummy drained England to pay for your bail.
And I mentioned that already about his mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine, having to drain the funds of England in order to pay for him to get out of imprisonment in Germany.
No king's ransom will save you from these bars, son. I'm eating you alive like the gangrene you died from. Hold war! Holster!
Okay, that's a tough one, but I gotta give it to Ragnar. I feel like his disses on Richard were much better and much deeper than the ones that Richard had on Ragnar. So I'm going to go with Ragnar for that one, but you let me know what you think. Use the comment section below. That was a lot of fun. It seems like there's a lot more to this video still, and I'm not entirely sure why, but I'm going to watch it real quick.
Thank you to Rise of Kingdoms for sponsoring this video.
All right, so it's just a bunch of extra stuff there at the end. I kind of like the Theodore Roosevelt thing going on. He's thanking all of his patrons, which, as always, please make sure you go over. I'll put a link in the description to the original content. Give them a subscribe. They got a lot of great content, and they should certainly be rewarded for that. So support them any way you can. And thank you to all of our patrons. We had a bunch of new patrons sign up in the last couple days. If you are at one of the tiers where you're to be listed in the description, I update those about once a week, so I will be updating that very, very soon, probably in the next couple of days. So fear not, if your name's not showing up, it will show up very soon. Thank you to everybody who supports this channel. We'll see you again soon.